Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the author interaction organized as a part of the NLF Reading Challenge 2021. My name is Karthika. I'm the head of reading at Neev Academy. We're very excited to be here, and we hope you are too. The NLF Reading Challenge is a 6 month long reading event from January to June 2021 for students between 10 to 13 years of age. It is open to participants on the competitive and the non competitive tracks. We have students from across India participating in the challenge. In addition to fun, book based activities and regular author interactions, the challenge will conclude with a quiz competition that will see the three best teams win gold, silver, and bronze engraved trophies, certificates, and a great set of books. Before we dive into the interaction, I would just like to point out to our audience that as this is a webinar, we would not be able to respond if you raise your virtual hand. Please do type out your questions in the Q&A box instead. If you already have your questions ready, please feel free to type them out, and we'll pass them on to the author once the Q&A segment begins. If you're a student, a teacher, or a school librarian, please do mention the name of your school as well. Today we have with us a very special guest, the award-winning and critically acclaimed writer Jewell Parker Rhodes, whose book Ghost Boys most of us have read. Jewell is the award-winning writer of several books for youth, including Black Brother, named Chicago Public Library's Best of the Best 2020, and the New York Times bestseller Ghost Boys, which has garnered over 30 awards and honors, including the Jane Addams Peace Award. Jewell is also the author of Towers Falling, winner of the 2017 Notable Books for a Global Society Award, and the celebrated Louisiana Girls Trilogy, Ninth Ward, winner of a Coretta Scott King Honor, Sugar, and Bayou Magic. Jewell currently serves as the Piper Endowed Chair and founding artistic director of the Virginia G. Piper Center for Creative Writing at Arizona State University. She enjoys teaching, walking her toy Aussie sheepdogs, theater, dancing, and music. Born in Pittsburgh, she now lives in Seattle. Welcome, Jewell. We're very happy to have you with us today.
Good evening. It's good morning my time. I'm very happy to be here. And students, I have had the pleasure of visiting your nation several times, and I am in love with it. So I hope next time, maybe I'll be touring your country and would get a chance to meet some of you. I have always wanted to write for young people. And in fact, I spent 30 years writing for adults, trying to become a good enough writer to write for young people. And it happened about 15 years ago when I wrote about Hurricane Katrina in Ninth Ward, when I heard my first child's voice enter my heart and soul, and I began my youth author career. But today we're going to talk about Ghost Boys. Ghost Boys is a book I didn't want to write. My editor actually suggested that I write about the murder of young Black boys. And I told her, no, I'm not going to do that. Are you nuts? My family said no. My children said no. And besides, I only wrote about books that I thought about. But after a while, 3 months to be exact, I finally decided that I'm going to write Ghost Boys because you, as young people, particularly young people in America, need to understand social justice and equality. So I thought I've been practicing to be a writer for youth all these years, so I'm going to give it a try. I was also a little girl when Emmett Till was murdered. And I remember seeing pictures of his death, his tortured body every year on the anniversary of his death. And now I'm a grandmother, which I adore, but partly I wanted to know, how come I'm a grandmother and there are still children of color being murdered in America? And just right now, we are mourning sprinting, pow, pow, 2 bullets, legs gave way. I fell flat, hard. I hit snowy ground. Ma's running, she's wailing, my boy, my boy. A policeman holds her back. Another policeman is standing over me, murmuring, it's a kid, it's a kid. Ma's struggling, she gasps like she can't breathe. She falls to her knees and screams, I can't bear the sound. Sirens wail. Other cops are coming. Did someone call an ambulance? I'm still dead, alone on the field. The policeman closest to me is rubbing his head. In his hand, his gun dangles. The other policeman is watching Ma like she's gonna hurt someone. Then he shouts, stay back. People are edging closer, snapping pictures, taking video with their phones. Stay back. The policeman's hand covers his holster. More people come. Some shout. I hear my name. Jerome. It's Jerome. Still, everyone stays back. Some curse, some cry. Doesn't seem fair. Nobody ever paid me any attention. I skated by, kept my head low. Now, I'm famous. Thank you.
That was so impactful. I know that after I finished reading Ghost Boys, I couldn't get it out of my head for a long time.
Thank you very, very much. I couldn't get it out of my soul. I still haven't. But when I finished writing Ghost Boys, I was in a depression. It was a very hard book to write. And it took me 2.5 years because it was so emotional. And at the same time, when I would stop writing, I would hear about things in the world that were still so unjust. So it's taken me a long time to get out of my feeling of sadness. And what helps me are young people like the people who are watching me today, that your support means a lot to me and helps me to keep writing.
Thank you for that, Jewell. I'm sure everybody who's in the audience appreciates hearing that from you. So we have some interesting questions that have come in for you. The first one starts with Anusha Tandon from class 8th, who says, actually, ma'am, I felt it so unreal that a person of my age became a ghost just because of a gun. How did this thought influence the title of the book? Similarly with Avnija Bajpai, who also asked, how did you come up with this title and perhaps the term Ghost Boys?
Oh, okay. Great question. I knew I wanted to use the term ghost, though in truth, Jerome is much more than a ghost. In America, we have stereotypes of like Casper the Friendly Ghost or ghosts as being horror movies. But I wanted to use that word still on purpose because I knew it would appeal to children. And I thought then I could show them that at least in terms of African American cultural tradition, we're really talking about ancestors. We're talking about spirits. We're talking about a belief in how the spiritual essence of human beings does not just completely disappear. And that links with a lot of cultures, whether they be from Southeast Asia or Latin America or, different regions of America. Now, boys is very interesting. During the time of intense segregation, white men would call an 80-year-old Black man a boy. It was a way of making them seem less than, of putting them in their place and making them feel powerless. So boy has a very negative reaction. And yet today, right, I'm writing about young people, boys. So Ghost Boys is a little bit provocative, but I wanted to grab people's attention so that I could teach about a spiritual tradition and take that word boy and turn it from this sort of negative, pejorative, discriminatory term into something positive. He's a kid, which means he has innocence. and he deserved to live.
Thank you. I don't think any of us were aware of that context, of the fact that the word boy had a pejorative sort of um yeah, we didn't know that at all. So thank you for putting that in context for us, Jewel.
You're quite welcome.
So we have a few more questions which you've sort of touched upon. Sanika says that was the story of Jerome real? And I'm guessing was the story of Jerome real?
Oh, yes. It
And
was inspired by real events, okay? And in particular, there was Tamir Rice, who was shot because he had a toy gun on Thanksgiving Day in America. Laquan McDonald, who was even walking away from police officers when they shot him 12 times in the back. Trayvon Martin, who was, eating Skittles, a candy, and drinking soda pop, and somebody challenged him for being in their neighborhood, and he said, "I live here," and still they ended up shooting him. And unfortunately, just a couple weeks ago, Adam Toledo, now they believe he had a gun that he threw away, but when the police called to him, he didn't have a gun in his hand. He raised his hands, he surrendered, and still he was shot. So I'm always inspired by real life events, and they're still going on.
you mentioned, Jewel, that, and it is still going on, and therefore the fact that the book continues to be relevant is something that your readers, I'm sure, will resonate with. And you've said that something that keeps you going is the feedback and what you hear back from young readers. And you've
Yes.
had several interactions with young readers over the years. So, is there something that you could share with us of something that has stayed with you, of how they've reacted to your work, of any action that they've sort of taken based on their reading of Ghost Boys?
I'm actually going to tell you one that I just learned about this week. About 2 years ago, a young German boy had a book club, and we talked about Ghost Boys. And his sister was listening in on the call, and she was in high school. And when she heard about it, she began a 2-year campaign to turn her school into a school for social justice and democracy. And she just notified me on Tuesday, and I was her mentor. Like, I was the person, the adult who was helping and supporting her, but she did all the work. But on Tuesday, I heard that officially the school in Germany is a school dedicated to social justice. I am so proud, and her name is Matilda Vasa. I am so proud of her. But that's one example.
That is some true action that Matilda has taken. And
Yes.
definitely worth being very proud of her. Excellent.
Yes.
I think we'll all go and look her up now. Jill, I also wanted to ask you in the context of what's happening with in the US with books. The American Library Association came out with a list recently of the books that were most challenged in 2020. And in that, there were 3 books on that list, which were All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and there was Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism in You by Ibram Kendi and Jason Reynolds, which were all set to sort of channel anti-police sentiments in light of the fact that you've written Ghost Boys and this is happening now. What is your opinion on this?
I think that it's disgraceful. Ghost Boys has been challenged in school districts. And last Thursday, I was talking to 100 students in Pennsylvania. And actually, as you were talking, somebody got on the chat and was spewing racial hatred that has never happened to me before during a school chat. But what I found is that most of the people who have challenged books, particularly the wonderful books that you mentioned by my colleagues, they've never read them. That I think, they just have this assumption that their mind goes, this is a war, Black versus white, and they actually don't know what they're talking about in terms of the actual book. A lot of people have told me that once they read my book, Ghost Boys or Black Brother, that they aren't against it because they see that I try to treat everybody with their full humanity. I don't try to have the us versus them. So not all police are bad, but there are police that are racist. And all of us have implicit bias that we have to learn to struggle against, so that when we get fearful, we don't automatically resort to stereotypes that cause us to act in a harmful way, particularly if you're a police officer. But when somebody says anti-police, they are really saying that they value armed control by adults more than they value the love and the glory and the innocence of a child. And I think that means there's something wrong inside their heart. I will take a child every day, and children need to learn and read and explore. And so, no, I don't believe in and that whole notion of anti-police, anti-particular police, but they deserve to be called out, because children deserve a chance to live in a society that governs not out of violence and fear and control, but develops and controls, not even really control, that's the wrong word, but sort of showers with love and support.
Thank you. I'm sure that's given everyone a lot to think about. So moving from that question to a more hopeful question. This is from Avnija Bajpai, who asks you, what did you want to show the world? What is the message that you wanted your readers to come away with on reading Goes Boys?
The biggest message was bear witness. Bearing witness is a human activity, and you can find all kinds of examples, whether it's people speaking out against refugee crises during the Holocaust, people, literally going to war to say no more, you can't exterminate people. So bearing witness can take many forms, but one of the most important forms is storytelling, that you speak truth to power. You let your voice be heard. I think charities like the UN are bearing witness, taking your pain, and instead of just feeling pain, using your actions and your words to make the world a better place. Now in America, we have footballers and basketball players who are like taking a knee or not standing for the national anthem. Things like that have been going on in the Black community since the beginning, are doing their fists, Black power, that we are saying, I love my country, but I want our country to fulfill its obligations for democracy and social justice. So that is a way of bearing witness. So you can love, love, love your country and your fellow humanity, but it doesn't mean you have to stop criticizing. You criticize what you love because you want them to be even better. So bearing witness is the big thing. And artists do that. People who write music do that, that you are not standing back and being quiet or silenced by your pain and atrocity.
Thank you for that, Jewell. So since we also have a lot of young writers in the audience, there are two questions that have come in. We have Keshavi Raghavan, who said, what made you become a writer? And we have Sayuri Sinha from Seth M.R. Jaipuria School. And I say it because she has industriously typed out her school's name, saying that she read your book, she really liked it. What should we do to study and become a great author like you?
Thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. Actually, I had a very hard childhood. My mother abandoned the family when I was 8 months old, and my grandmother raised me. We were very poor. We couldn't afford books. So I needed teachers and librarians and programs like the NLF Challenge to help me. But I wrote all the time. One of the things about not seeing yourself in books is that you don't believe that you can be a writer. So even though I wrote all the time, I didn't think I could do that as a career because I had never read anybody who was a person of color. And it wasn't until I was a junior in college that I went into a library and I saw a book by a Black woman. And it was like, what? And that just changed everything. Even The People Who Could Fly, which is a children's book, I did not discover that until I was an adult, about Black people as slaves who flew home to Africa. So when I discovered Black people wrote books, I thought I wanted to write books to show a diversity of cultures and show other children that they need to tell their stories too. Also, now I study how cultures tell story, and India has a wondrous, terrific tradition of storytelling. We need you to write stories from your heritage to share with the world, more and more and more. I know you have a lot, but we need more and more and more, because everybody deserves to have their story heard and felt across time. Now, I did try that with the idea that when I wanted to write, I wrote with a purpose. I wrote with the sense of wanting to communicate. We need to stop division. We need to have more love. We need to be more inclusive, and that humanity, we're all the same. Did you know at my university, Arizona State University, we have the bones of Lucy. Lucy is considered to be the first skeleton of the human mother of the mother of the human race. And Lucy came from Africa. So actually, anthropologists argue that we were all descended from an African woman. And as we moved across the globe, our skin tone changed as to whether we needed more vitamin D. So in the Scandinavian countries or down near the equator, our skin would be brown to protect us from, the sun and the sun rays. So what has happened, particularly across the world, but most notably in America, they took skin color, which is just like a superficial difference, like eye color or hair color, or whether you're tall or short, and used it to discriminate. And I think in particular, it was easy to say if you were white, oh, they look different because of the brown skin. And if you were a slave and you tried to run away, they could find you because you were brown. But it's ridiculous. So that fuels me of wanting to be inclusive, and that's my message. So writing is not just about telling what happened. It's you, the artist, developing your thoughts, your spirit, your heart, and what is it that you want to say to the world as a gift? What do you want to teach? That point of view is important. So think about how you become a person that you love, that you want to make a difference in the world, and that will guide your themes in your stories.
Thank you, Jewel. I'm sure that's now left everyone inspired to really sort of mine their lives and mine their heritage with the stories that they want to write and the stories that they want to tell.
Yes, you are powerful. Your stories are powerful. So bravo. I look forward to reading them.
You mentioned, Jewel, I mean, since I see Paradise on Fire behind you, and therefore I have to ask, um, you mentioned that the driving force behind your work is to inspire social justice, equality, and environmental stewardship. And I read a description of Paradise on Fire which said that it's about race, class, and climate change. And so it seems to speak to all of those reasons. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Paradise on Fire. In America, there's a program that takes inner city Black kids and sends them to the wilderness to learn. We have great natural resources and parks in America, but 95% of the people who go to them are white people, that they are not welcoming to Asian American, Black American, Hispanic American. And so what happens when you have a lot of people who don't know nature? How do you teach or share with them the importance of nature, the importance of combating climate change, of protecting our planet? So in this story, a group of 6 kids who are from the city, they go to California and they learn, like, whoa, hiking, whoa, bouldering, whoa, climbing ropes. And one girl in particular, Addie, who is actually Adago, who's African and African American, and her name means daughter of the eagles. She's really good at maps and drawing maps and seeing things from above, aerial perception. And she comes to find out, whoa, I'm good at this nature stuff. And it's Addie who is the one who's going to help her friends survive when they get caught in a wildfire. She is the one who's going to become an environmental engineer, a climate change advocate, only because there was a moment where she got to understand and experience nature. So all of us need to keep our air clean, our water clean. And unfortunately, across the globe, people who are poorer live in the areas that are most affected by poor water, poor air, so that their life expectancy is shorter. And, they end up having diseases such as asthma because of that. So actually, climate change is a justice that we need to make right. It does have a class and a racial component.
Thank you. We can't wait for it to release. It comes out September 2021, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
We'll be
Thank
sure to
you.
buy it for our library. And I'm sure
Oh,
that
thank
all
you.
our viewers here will too.
And all of you, you can invite me back and I'll come and talk with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'd be happy and delighted to hear from you and to have you with us. Okay, Jewel, I think we have time for one last question. And this is a question that we ask all our authors. But before we move into that, I'll just give you one bit of feedback from one of your readers, Sanika Kote from Purna Learning Center, who says this was a very touching book. I couldn't even put the book down. In fact, I finished the book in one day.
Oh my. Thank you so very, very much. That means a lot to me. If you could have seen me when I finished the book, I was just broken. And words like yours today, I hold in my heart and my memory. And they really inspire me when I get tired or when I feel that I can't go on. So thank you for sharing that with me. It means the world. I'm very touched. Thank you.
So lovely, Joe. Thank you so much. So, our last question for you, and this would, I'm sure, have you thinking and reminiscing. Um, you mentioned that The People Could Fly by Virginia Hamilton was your favorite childhood book, because slaves flying back to America meant resilience, hope, and freedom to you. If you could have a shelf of books that have helped make you who you are today, what would the titles be on that shelf?
Okay, all right. And I just want to correct that People Could Fly. I didn't discover that until I was an adult. So I didn't, if I had seen that when I was a child, I would have started writing sooner and saying I want to be an author. But when I was a child, I did like Little Women an awful lot. I liked Black Beauty, and I used to identify with animal stories. So any story about a dog or a horse, because it would show how they were hurt and yet they didn't deserve to be hurt. And in the end, they lived happily ever after. For me, that had resonance for me as a person. But when I was a kid and I didn't have a bookshelf at home other than the books that, the librarians gave me, I would collect pop bottles, glass bottles with Coca-Cola, and I would get a nickel for every bottle. And I would buy comic books. Yay. And comic books are like graphic novels. So I liked Archie and Jughead, but I also love the classic illustrated comics. And my favorite were the King Arthur stories. The favorite were the stories where you had a knight who had a sword, who saved the world and was honorable in integrity. And in particular, I loved Prince Valiant. And one day I was eating a donut and my husband asked me, I was 27, Jewel, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because as you can see, I still haven't grown up. I have my childhood joy. And I immediately said valiant. So look that word up. What does valiant mean? And that was something that I read that touched my heart when I was a child and had an impact, even though I didn't discover it until decades later. In terms of a children's author that I adore, I recommend Walter Dean Myers. He died a few years ago, but all of his books opened up a world to African American cultural stories. So his work has served as a mentorship for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think on that note, we have to say this has been a session that has been filled with enthusiasm, with cheer, with courage, with valiance, and with warmth and
Thank
wisdom.
you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much
Thank
for
you.
being with us
I'm
today.
sending you a heart and I'm sending you a love. All of you take good care of yourself. And the best way to combat racism and discrimination and bullying is to start with yourself. Love yourself. You are gorgeous, wonderful, smart, empathetic. There is nobody exactly like you. And if everybody just felt proud of themselves, they would never want to be so insecure to hurt somebody else, to discriminate. So, one small step, but an important one, is for you to know just as you are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jewel.
Bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.
See you. Thank you so much. See you. Thank you so much to our audience who've joined us today as well. We hope you had an incredible session. We certainly did. We are really looking forward to seeing you for our next sessions of the NLF Reading Challenge, which happens with Kimberly Brubaker Bradley on April 23rd at 5:30 p.m., which is next Friday. She won the Newbery Honor for The War That Saved My Life. She also won the Newbery Honor in 2020 for her book Fighting Words. We are very excited to be able to interact with her. Followed by our interaction with Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, we also have an interaction with the Irish author John Connolly on his book, The Book of Lost Things, on Saturday, April 24th at 4 p.m. We will send you the registration details in our follow up email. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to follow our social media channels for any further updates on the festival. We hope that you had a good time. We hope that you will stay safe. We hope that you will take care. And we hope and wish you, as always, happy reading. See you soon.